Colin Cowherd stormed into the studio this morning with a fire that couldn't be hidden, slamming papers, pacing across the set, and muttering under his breath about Cleveland's so-called leadership. Before the cameras even rolled, and from the very first second it was clear, this was no ordinary rant, no routine hot take, but a full-blown explosion exposing what he called criminal mismanagement of the Browns. And in that instant, you knew this wasn't about depth charts or practice rotations. This was a direct collision between the old guard of conservative coaching and the new era of media-driven reality. A philosophical war spilling live on air, raw and unfiltered, the kind of drama fans have been begging for because it strips away the polished coach speak and throws us into the unvarnished chaos behind the scenes. And as Cowherd's voice cracked with fury, declaring Cleveland was destroying its own generational star by handing away reps like they were meaningless scraps, every major sports outlet snapped to attention. Every fan on social media erupted, and the fuse was lit for what may now be remembered as the single broadcast that changed the entire quarterback conversation forever. The moment Cowherd's segment began, it looked like any other morning broadcast with the standard highlight reels, commercial obligations, and the usual upbeat tone, but everything shifted. The instant Cleveland's practice report flashed across the screen and the numbers told the story, 12 measly first-team reps for Shedeur Sanders compared to 47 for Dillon Gabriel, and you could see the change in Cowherd's face. His jaw tightened, his papers went flying, the teleprompter was abandoned, and what followed wasn't scripted television, but a raw eruption that even veteran staff members backstage weren't prepared for, because he launched into Cleveland with the kind of rage usually reserved for scandals and national crises, thundering across the airwaves with that line that instantly went viral. "What are we doing here, Cleveland?" Hammering home the absurdity of sidelining a young star who sells jerseys, moves the needle, and electrifies ratings while treating him like a disposable backup. And insiders swear this wasn't some manufactured television theatrics. It was the boiling point of weeks of frustration watching Sanders consistently marginalized, while Gabriel was elevated, a tipping point where patience ran out and the gloves finally came off. What made this eruption so seismic was how quickly it transformed the entire sports media landscape, because within minutes, every major outlet from ESPN to FS1 pivoted their coverage to the Cleveland controversy. Emergency panels were scrambled, push notifications flooded phones, and Twitter's algorithm practically broke under the weight of the clip's velocity. And suddenly, the Browns quarterback debate wasn't just a local training camp storyline, it was a national crisis dissected in real time, and the effect on public sentiment was immediate, because before Cowherd's blast, the fan base was split between Gabriel's steady system knowledge and Sanders' star power and cultural pull. But the moment his passionate plea hit the airwaves, the scales tilted, and hashtags like #Free12 and #StandWithSanders trended nationally as the city's long-suffering supporters, exhausted from decades of quarterback purgatory, finally felt their anger articulated by a powerful voice on their behalf. And while the front office tried to play it cool inside team facilities, sources say chaos erupted, assistants scrambling, players glued to their screens, and a visibly tense Kevin Stefanski forced into an emergency meeting with clenched fists and forced calm as he realized Cowherd's voice wasn't just commentary anymore, it had become the narrative. The real danger for Cleveland wasn't just the media frenzy, but the way Cowherd's words ripped straight through the organization's carefully built messaging, because for weeks, General Manager Andrew Berry had been preaching patience, process, and competitive meritocracy, but with one fiery segment, Cowherd blew that narrative to pieces, leaving Berry trapped between a coaching staff loyal to Gabriel's steady command and an ownership group intoxicated by the commercial goldmine of Sanders. And what makes this moment so volatile is that Stefanski genuinely believes in his methodical system, in rewarding performance and development the old-fashioned way, and yet his authority is now crumbling in public, as the face of the franchise is being anointed live on national television by one of the most influential voices in sports media. And to make matters worse, Cowherd didn't just call Sanders talented. He called him the face of the future NFL. Not a face, but the face. Definitive and transformational. And once that label sticks, every decision the Browns make is judged through that lens. How can you bench the future face of the league? How dare you limit his opportunities? Why would any competent franchise suppress such a marketable phenom? And suddenly, what began as a quarterback competition had escalated into an existential crisis about identity, philosophy, and the very future of Cleveland football. And this is where the football context becomes unavoidable, because while Gabriel has looked sharp in camp with his decision-making, timing, and growing chemistry with receivers, Sanders has shown flashes that defy rookie logic, firing passes with effortless velocity, dropping dimes into impossible windows, and making even the most skeptical coaches admit behind closed doors that they're dealing with something rare. And yet, the reps keep tilting heavily in Gabriel's favor, a choice Cowherd framed as sabotage rather than strategy. And that's why his tirade resonated so deeply, because it wasn't just a television host hyping a prospect. It was a respected veteran broadcaster essentially declaring that Cleveland was destroying generational talent in real time, and the ripple effect was massive because every stat line, every rep count, every practice report instantly became evidence for or against Stefanski's stubborn philosophy, turning normal developmental growing pains into a full-blown indictment of his competence. And in that environment, even players who stayed neutral were dragged into the storm, forced to pick sides between a proven system guy and a rookie already being cast as the savior of the league, a dynamic that threatened to fracture the locker room before the season even started. But beyond the practice field, this clash was also about image, power, and media leverage, because Cowherd knew exactly what he was doing by planting his flag as Sanders' #1 advocate, guaranteeing himself access, insider scoops, and the role of kingmaker in a career that could define the next decade of the NFL. And every time he defended Sanders, the numbers proved him right as engagement spiked, clips went viral, and his brand became inseparable from the quarterback's rise. While Stefanski, on the other hand, suddenly looked like the out-of-touch dinosaur coach blocking progress, a man painted as stubborn and short-sighted, even though his system has produced Pro Bowlers and his schemes are considered among the league's most creative. And that's what made Cowherd's attack so brutal, because it wasn't framed as professional critique, but as a character assassination delivered with maximum force, branding him as the problem, the roadblock, the man standing in the way of the future. And once that story stuck, the debate wasn't about football mechanics anymore, but about whether Cleveland's leadership even understood the era of entertainment-driven football they were supposed to be living in, an era where narrative matters as much as the scoreboard, and where media voices now hold the kind of power coaches can no longer ignore. The studio was electric as Cowherd went off, producers stunned, cameras locked in, and a veteran operator whispering he'd never seen anything like it. Cowherd's voice cracking as he warned of wasted potential, his gestures frantic, his urgency undeniable. And suddenly, this wasn't just sports talk, but a cultural showdown, Stefanski clinging to old-school patience, while Cowherd demanded instant action. And the ripple effect was brutal, as every snap became a referendum, every presser an interrogation, Sanders riding a wave of validation, while Gabriel faded into the background, outshined by a rookie already being framed as the league's next chosen one. Cleveland fans wasted no time turning Cowherd's rant into a movement. Sports radio lit up with angry callers demanding change, season ticket holders threatening boycotts, and Sanders jerseys flying off shelves while social media drowned in memes and hashtags. And inside team headquarters, the panic was real, with emergency meetings called, ownership pressing for answers, PR scrambling for damage control, and Stefanski caught in the middle, watching his authority collapse, as the narrative hardened into one brutal message: play Sanders now or risk destroying the franchise's future. By the end of the day, the Browns were in full-blown crisis mode, ownership torn between protecting a coach's process and cashing in on a rookie star power. And with every loss, Stefanski's seat gets hotter, every snap Sanders takes becomes headline news, and the team's carefully built unity now hangs by a thread. As veterans try to stay neutral while younger players pick sides, leaving Cleveland trapped in a storm where media power outweighs coaching authority and where one viral rant has turned a quarterback battle into an organizational meltdown. Cowherd's eruption didn't just spark debate, it rewrote the Browns' entire story, forcing fans, media, and ownership to see Sanders not as a rookie, but as the face of the league. And now, Cleveland stands at a crossroads. Either embrace the pressure and hand him the reins, or cling to process and risk a revolt. Because the days of quiet development are over, the spotlight is blazing, the narrative is set, and one broadcast has left the Browns with no way back.